There's an interesting question that emerges from all this cellular and molecular research into how UV radiation causes skin cancer. Does understanding the biology actually help us prevent cancer more effectively, or is it just academic knowledge? I'd argue strongly that understanding sunburn at the cellular level absolutely does improve prevention, and in several important ways that have real-world applications. First, understanding the mechanisms helps clarify why prevention needs to be consistent and long-term rather than occasional and reactive. When people think sunburn is just temporary discomfort, they might protect themselves only when they're expecting intense exposure, like at the beach. But when you understand that every exposure causes molecular damage that accumulates over time, that daily exposure activates inflammatory processes that can persist, and that mutations accumulate gradually with repeated exposure, it becomes obvious that daily sun protection is necessary. The biological understanding changes behavior by making the invisible consequences visible in your mind. Second, cellular level knowledge helps identify the most critical periods for protection. Understanding that UV damage disrupts DNA repair systems, that developing cells are especially vulnerable, and that early life exposure establishes long-lasting patterns of cellular behavior explains why protecting children and young adults is particularly important. This isn't just general health advice, it's based on specific biological mechanisms that make early protection especially effective at reducing lifetime cancer risk. Third, understanding the biology opens up new prevention strategies beyond just avoid the sun. If we know that chronic inflammation is a key link between UV exposure and cancer, we can potentially develop interventions that reduce inflammation or protect cells during inflammatory responses. If we understand which specific proteins and pathways are most critical for preventing cancer, we can potentially develop compounds that strengthen those systems. Some research is already exploring whether certain antioxidants or other substances might provide additional protection by targeting specific molecular mechanisms of UV damage. Cellular level understanding also improves detection and early intervention. By knowing what molecular changes occur first when cells are moving toward cancer, researchers are developing methods to identify at-risk tissue before tumors actually form. There's work on detecting specific mutation patterns, identifying aberrant protein expression, or recognizing cells with damaged protective systems. If we can catch problems at the molecular level, we might intervene before cancer develops. Additionally, understanding mechanisms helps people make informed decisions about the trade-offs involved in sun exposure. When you know that 10 minutes of unprotected sun exposure creates hundreds of DNA lesions per cell, activates inflammatory pathways, and contributes to your lifetime mutation burden, you can weigh that against whatever benefit you're getting from that exposure. Maybe the benefit is still worth it in some cases, but at least you're making an informed choice based on understanding the real biological costs. The biological knowledge also helps combat misinformation. There are many myths about sun exposure and skin cancer, from ideas that tanning provides adequate protection to claims that sunscreen itself is more dangerous than sun exposure. Understanding the actual molecular mechanisms of UV damage and cancer development provides a solid foundation for evaluating these claims. You can look at the biology and see clearly that melanin provides only partial protection, that UV radiation causes specific and well-documented cellular damage, and that sunscreen demonstrably prevents that damage. Perhaps most importantly, cellular-level understanding transforms skin cancer prevention from a list of arbitrary rules into a logical strategy based on biological reality. It's not about following guidelines because someone says you should. It's about understanding what's actually happening in your cells and making choices based on that understanding. That type of knowledge-based motivation is much more powerful and sustainable than fear-based or rule-based approaches. When you truly understand what UV radiation does to your cellular machinery, sun protection becomes an obvious and sensible choice rather than an inconvenient restriction.